Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 251, and I want, before we get started tonight, I wanted to just, first of all, in our chat in Discord so far, and I think she's going to do it in Twitch as well, Caradhras has been circulating a link to a little survey that we're doing, just trying to kind of find out where people are. Caradhras is our regional moot coordinator, and so we're trying to find, of the people who attend our broadcasts and everything, where are you guys located, so that we can, make sure as we're targeting regional moot locations, we can figure out to make sure to, target places where we have a lot of people. So little regional moot questionnaire that she's circulating there. So I just recommend, if you care to help us figure out where we might want to target, if you're interested in increasing the chances of a regional moot being located near, coming to near you, that would be very helpful to fill that out. Because we do have, we've got discussions of many regional moots underway. We're talking about our next Buckeye moot. We're talking about bringing Magnolia moot back in the southeast. We're talking about the Pacific Northwest moot. We're talking about a whole bunch of things I've mentioned before. We're very close to confirming Maple moot and Tex moot, and a whole bunch of other regional moots. We've also been working on our next Europe moot as well, hoping to get over to Europe again. And don't forget that coming up very shortly, we have Osmoot down in Australia, so you can sign up to attend digitally. If you cannot actually get to Australia, you can join us and either watch the sessions live at a fun and unusual time of day, probably wherever you are, or of course you can get access to the archive of recordings of those as well. So I wanted to just make sure that you guys remember that, and also don't forget, we are coming up now. Before long, we will be opening registration for Myth Moot this year, Myth Moot 2023. Our triumphant return to the NCC. We'll be back at the National Conference Center, which has been our primary venue for many years, and that has been so much fun. We couldn't be there last year because they were housing several thousand children, refugees from the Middle East. So we were delighted that they were able to do that and to kind of help, accommodate that however we could. But we did miss our favorite venue. So we're going to be back to the NCC now, and really looking forward to that. It's going to be, as usual, the last weekend in June. And as I say, registration should be before too long. We're working on that. So Myth Moot is the big wonderful the big wonderful conference of the year. Yes, June in Virginia, just the place for a Caradhras reenactment. Indeed. But anyhow, so yeah, it's really looking forward to Myth Moot again this year, and I hope that many of you will be able to join us. Good. I saw that you signed up for Sunshine Moot today. Very exciting. Sunshine Moot, I didn't even mention that one. The one that is actually open for registration already down in Orlando, Florida, in March. That's March, isn't it? I'm pretty sure that's March. Sometimes I get my calendar confused, but yes, there we go. March 18th. That's the one. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be awesome. Sunshine Moot was great fun. We returned to that one last year, so it's going to be our second time in the post-pandemic Sunshine Moot. It's going to be it's going to be pretty cool. All right, so lots of excitement on the spring moot front as we're preparing not only the spring moots, but summer, and even starting to look towards next fall as well. So that's going to be pretty cool. All right, well, let us get back into the text. Oh, and of course, the other thing that I wanted to mention is today is a fun day. Today is the first day of our spring semester in our graduate program at Signum University. Of course, our graduate program has been around for a long time. We've now been running this for 11 years. And so, sometimes I forget to announce new semesters because it's become part of life, the rotation of our semesters in our graduate program. But I did want to mention it, especially since there's still time to sign up for courses if you wanted to. So people who are interested in really digging deep, people who are interested in either taking courses towards the master's degree or also towards the graduate diploma, which we have. The graduate diploma is you take the same courses as you take in the master's degree program. So it's the course by course, it's just as rigorous, but it's about half the length of the master's degree program, and it does not have a required master's thesis at the end. So for people who are really interested to take some courses, to really dig in to the academic study of Tolkien and medieval literature and Germanic philology and the other courses that we offer, this is a really great opportunity. Our graduate diploma program is a great way to, well, I was going to say get your feet wet, but you do a great deal more than getting your feet wet, and yet you're not committing yourself to a longer-term degree program of the master's degree and the big project, which is the master's thesis at the end of that. So, yes, the graduate diploma is sort of equivalent to what the Europeans call their diploma. Our nomenclature there was in fact influenced by the European system. Yes, exactly. Anyway, so I just I wanted to bring people's attention to that. You can so even if maybe you have enough degrees, maybe you can't commit to a master's degree right now. It's a fun opportunity to be able to dig in and take real graduate classes, get a graduate diploma with a concentration in Tolkien studies, for instance. There are a lot of people who have been doing that, and it's been a really rewarding experience for folks. Our graduate program is really top notch. Just the best place to study Tolkien and Germanic philology in the world. So definitely want to encourage people to look into that on the first day of classes of our spring semester. But as I say, not too late, even now, to join us. And certainly great, exciting classes coming up in the fall. In the summertime, we have 3 full semesters a year. So we don't just do like a weird summer term or something. We do a full semester in the summertime. So we have spring, summer, and fall semesters. So really fun courses coming up in the summer and fall here as well. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Let us get back into the text. So, I wanted to. We ended talking about Sam last time, and I had I received some reflections on Sam from a friend. Many of you have met him, Peter Ribsky, who can't usually be with us live because he lives in Finland and it's already the middle of the night over there. But Peter's been to Mythmoot many times. For those of you who have been, and might have gotten a chance to meet Peter there. And if you were very fortunate to sample some of the Finnish vodka that he sometimes brings with him to Mythmoot. But Peter was interested in our conversation about Sam, and was thinking, especially in response to what I was saying at the end, where I was talking about the observations people were making that Sam sounds like a grumbling soldier. And I said, yeah, I agree. That's true. But that in itself is only to observe a similarity. Like I perceive that there's a similarity between the way that Sam is talking and the way that soldiers sometimes talk. What I want is then the next step. So what is that doing then? What does it do? Like, why do soldiers do that? Are they just whining? Presumably not only that. Like, what, if it's going to help me to understand not only what Sam is doing in the sense of what does it show us about Sam's own mindset, but in particular, what does it do for Frodo? What does Frodo get from it? I think that's an awkward way to say it, but something like that. Anyway, Peter sent me a message and was interested in this question in large part because he's been in the military for his whole career. He's been in the U.S. Navy for like 20 years, and says that he spent decades listening to complaining sailors. So anyway, he was pointing out several things about this. One of the things he was pointing out is that griping and complaining always goes up the chain of command and not down. Those in the position of leadership make decisions and hope for the best. They want to offer confidence for those who are following them. So people who are in a position of command, a position of authority, sort of can't complain. Like it's a serious breaking of the rules for them to complain. And so there is one sense, therefore, in this way, in which the private, right, the person at the bottom of the ladder, has a kind of freedom, not quite responsibility, but like they're the ones who can give voice to the things that everybody is thinking, right? And when he was talking about that felt like Sam a great deal. I felt like that actually helped me to understand Sam's role a good deal. Sam is absolutely, with the possible exception of Bill, though I think that's debatable, obviously at the bottom end of the social totem pole in this company, right? I mean, there's just no question. If there is a private in this company, right? If there's like the lowest ranking person, clearly Sam, right? And that there's a way in which, again, that being the lowest point, and he was kind of walking through and realizing, listening to Peter talk about it was making me realize something we had been already starting to get at. There's a lot of cooks in this kitchen, when it comes to the Company of the Ring, right? There's a lot of leaders here. Not only in the sense that you've got Aragorn and Gandalf kind of sharing leadership in a sense, but then you've got Boromir right there. He's the kind of leadership elephant in the room, right? The guy who's the general and used to giving commands and who's been pretty good about not doing it, right? And not stepping in, but seems to be increasingly kind of itching to stick his oar in because that's what he's used to doing. But even beyond that, even Gimli and Legolas in particular, he's the son of the king, for crying out loud. Even Merry and Pippin are, at least from high social class, right? And are people who are at least sort of in a different social kind of position. Sam is really like the only peasant, right, in the entire company, right? He's the only one who doesn't have any. Now, it's not that Sam and Pippin are in a leadership position within the company, right? That's clearly not the case, and I'm not trying to imply that. But what I'm saying is, though, relatively speaking, right? Even think back to Merry, especially when they set out from Crickhollow, right? He was not just their guide. He was, he kind of took charge. Right. And my point there is simply that Merry is, in doing that, in kind of acting that way, Merry is showing that world is kind of natural to him. It's not alien to him. Right. Being in a position of authority is not a strange world. Right. And then, of course, there's Frodo. And now Frodo was always the leader and the senior, the oldest member of the four hobbits, right? But of course, even in this company, there's a sense in which he's the leader. He's the point of the whole mission. He's not, as Peter said, he's not the commander in the field here, right? But he is the focal point of the entire group. In other words, nobody can complain. There isn't anybody who can give voice to the sort of feelings of everyone, right? Except for Sam. And that Sam seems to be seems to be fulfilling his role. And so Peter went on to point out some other things about how you can see how sort of careful Gandalf and Strider have been about disagreeing in front of the troops and everything, right? And that's starting to now spill over a little bit in the in this slide here that we looked at last week. At least the debate is kind of opening up now to the public. And one of the things that he was pointing out was in this context, right? The context of this debate, which leaves Pippin crying out miserably, but what can we do, right? Which is, of course, the risk when you have the leadership, like multiple leaders who are all debating amongst themselves, right? Especially openly in front of everybody. You end up with Pippin saying, what can we do? Shivering miserably, right? Just wanting somebody to figure out how to get them out of this problem that they're in, right? What Sam does is not that, right? He's complaining, right? He's griping about the situation. Aragorn has just said, we've passed no place on the way up that offered more shelter than this cliff wall we're under now. And Sam mutters, right? He doesn't shout it out, right? He's not like yelling at Strider. He's not opposing or rebelling. He's only muttering so that Frodo can hear him, right? And he's giving voice to the thing which, no doubt, Frodo and everybody else, including Aragorn himself, is thinking, right? Aragorn can say, let's make the best of this, right? This is the best we can do. There was no better shelter down, and the shelter up ahead is even worse, right? So this is the best we can do. Let's make the most of it. That's what he has to do. What else can he say as one of the leaders of the group? But it falls to Sam to say, okay, but this sucks, right? This is really bad. I get it, but this is not shelter. If this is shelter, then one wall and no roof make a house. And he's not making a joke. This is not designed to make you laugh. But there is a kind of, there is something slightly disarming in this, right? And notice what he's not doing. What he's not doing is complaining about the leadership, right? He could be muttering something like, darn idiots don't know what they're doing, leading us up here into the snow to die. That's the kind of grumbling, when the private starts grumbling like that, it's a little bit less good, right? So Sam is not, if anything, his comment about the shelter and his sort of whimsical statement of it doesn't quite diffuse the situation, but draws attention away, if anything, from the debate, the trouble, right, in a sense. Anyway, I think that. So anyway, I wanted to share with you some. There were several other reflections that Peter had as well. But his overall point in the end was he thinks that there is a kind of reassurance to Frodo in acknowledging the doubts, like for there to be somebody who acknowledges the difficulties to be overcome, the discomforts that they're all under. So somebody to say the thing that he would want to say, but can't let himself say because he's in a leadership position. He can't do that. Right. And I wonder what the other thing it makes me wonder, remember we were focused before, especially back in the time between the council and the departure from Rivendell. And then also at the beginning of the journey as well. So most of the earlier part of this chapter, in other words, we've been focused a lot through the discussion of this chapter so far on the ways in which many people, Gandalf, Bilbo especially, before they left Rivendell, were focused on kind of keeping Frodo's spirits up. There seemed to me to be a good deal of focus on Frodo's kind of emotional and spiritual outlook, right? And the more I've thought about it, again, especially assisted by Peter's reflections, the more I've thought about it, the more I think I can begin to see how Sam's grumblings actually help Frodo's state in that way. On the surface, it seems to wholly contradict it, right? Everybody else trying to kind of cheer him up and get him to think about positive things, and here's Sam being Mr. Doom and Gloom, right? Here's Sam puddle glumming over the whole thing, right? And sounding almost like he's determined to look at the worst at things instead of the best, right? Here's Aragorn being like, let's make the best out of this overhanging cliff wall that we have right here, and Sam being like, yeah, that's not shelter, right? Sam seeming to make the worst of it, right? Again, on the surface, it seems like he's doing the opposite of what everybody's doing. It seems like the direction of his comments would be towards like tearing down Frodo's state. Again, superficially. But the more I've reflected on it, as I say, especially assisted by Peter's reflections, the less I think that that's true. That there seems to be something helpful, something what's the not healing, that's too like strong a word, wholesome, I guess, in Sam's mutterings, right? In Sam's grumbles, because they give vent to something which might otherwise kind of build up in Frodo, right? And even by providing, there's a sense in which also this is Sam kind of taking advantage of the opportunity provided by the relative positions of Frodo and Sam. Frodo is Sam's master, right? Sam is his responsibility on some level, right? That seems clear, I think, in the sort of social contract, sort of unstated social contract between Frodo and Sam, that both of them, they're friends. And I'm not trying to undermine that in any way. But Sam is still his servant, plainly sees himself as Frodo's servant. The way that he calls him master still all the time, right? Makes that explicitly clear, and Frodo accepts that, doesn't correct him or anything like that. So what I mean is, as the one in that position, as the one who is in that leadership position over Sam, it's Frodo's responsibility to cheer Sam up and bring Sam along, right? By providing him, so he not only kind of speaks for Frodo in a sense, says the things that Frodo is thinking, validates the things that Frodo might be feeling, right? But not let himself say. Those things I think are all valuable in themselves, but in addition, he is also providing an opportunity for Frodo to cheer him up, which stirs Frodo himself. Like Frodo knows his own duty Sam knows that Frodo knows his own duty too well to let himself grow despondent if he has a semi-despondent, a periodically despondent servant whom it's his responsibility to keep going, if you see what I mean, right? So that seems to me, there's a way in which it occurs to me that there's a sort of perverse kind of encouragement, right? Sam knows that one of the ways he can keep Frodo's spirits up is to put Frodo in a position to keep his spirits up, if you see what I mean. And yeah, Matt, I do agree with you there. Part of that social contract, and the one between officer and soldier and master and servant, is that the grumbling means things are okay. When it gets very formal, things have gone wrong. Yes, and there I think it's also, the grumbling is also a first cousin to hobbitry. Notice we've said before, Merry and Pippin and Frodo and Gandalf all indulge in broad hobbitry at various times, teasing, right? Very rarely does it go down to Sam. Very rarely does Sam dish it out. And when he does, he's fairly tentative about it, dishing it out to his betters, as his father might say. So yes, I think that Matt, there is it's just like if Frodo and Merry and Pippin all started being like frightfully polite to each other at all times, it would be a sign that there was some serious strain on their friendship, right? Something would be very, very wrong with that relationship. If they stopped, like, teasing each other and saying horrible things to each other. And I suspect that there is a parallel thing going on. Again, Sam doesn't rag on Frodo in the same way that, like, Merry and Frodo, will rag on each other. But I think Sam's grumbling does kind of fulfill that role. As you say, if things were really bad, Sam wouldn't talk like this. And we'll see. When things get really bad, Sam won't talk like this. Not to Frodo, anyway, right? Yeah, and so, Miss Ray, I really love that observation. She's saying we can see it's a sort of way in which Sam carries Frodo, even early on. Yes, yeah, and I think in the back of my head I'm kind of thinking of that, Miss Ray, that Sam, certainly if one were to look at passages like this and try from that to build the case that earlier on Sam is a downer, right? That Sam is like a weight on Frodo, I think that would be a serious misreading. An understandable one. I mean, there's evidence to support. If you wanted to try to make that argument, you'll find evidence to support it. But I think that despite that, it would be a very tone-deaf interpretation of that evidence. Because I agree with you, Miss Ray. I think that he is certainly not less attentive to Frodo's, like, mental, emotional, and spiritual health than Gandalf and Bilbo are, right? He's not less sensitive to that and not less solicitous about it than they are. And so therefore, I think an interpretation that understands his comments like this in that context seems to me important. That's why I've been still kind of wrestling with this ever since we stopped last time, and was really grateful for Peter's comments. For Thomas, you're right. I think that Sam engages in a kind of hobbitry with Ted Sandyman at the pub, but there's like an edge to it. Like it's not quite the same as it is between Merry and Frodo, for instance. But I agree. We certainly don't see it in most other places. But yes, Jackie, you are right that we will get a little bit of an explanation about this we will get Merry's reflections on this later on in the House of the Healing. I don't want to look at that passage in detail right now, mostly because it's going to be important to think about that in the context, in its own context. I'm not saying it isn't relevant, and certainly if one were like writing a paper on this subject, that would be a very relevant place to look for sure. But at the same time, even Merry's own construction, like even his own analysis of his own culture that he's delivering at that moment, I think is colored by where he's sitting at the moment, which is, of course, in a bed in the Houses of Healing after the Battle of Pelennor Field. But exactly, Jackie. It's all good. Don't worry. We'll get to that real soon. Real soon. Yes. Yes, very true, Carita. Well remembered that the theme of Sunshine Moot in Orlando in March is leadership. And so there would be an interesting paper on this point, on this stuff to be delivered, or further discussion to be had at that moot. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, great question. What social class is a miller? Millers are weird in lots of ways, because on the one hand, they're working people. I mean, they're not like aristocrats, right? They're not book learned. They're not, and so in many of the social indicators, they're just as blue collar as everybody else, but they also tend to be rich and very influential because they tend to have a monopoly on a thing that everybody in town needs. And so they tend to be in a kind of position of power, and often of wealth. You can tell on account of how everybody, like the millers in medieval stories, all tend to be not only villains, but ridiculous villains. There's seems to be a lot of resentment towards millers. Fort Knollys, he says that millers would have been like the medieval equivalent of a lawyer, work for their money, but pretty significant. Yeah, except the difference is like schooling, right? Lawyers undergo like school, and so it's a learned profession, right? Being a lawyer, you gotta do book learning to get there. Whereas again, miller not so. So it's a strange kind of. Right. The joke is that like the middle class is emerging for 1,000 years, and it's one other example of something like a middle class emerging there. But JJ, yes, also in that lawyers also have a poor reputation in society despite having an important job. Yeah, exactly. Certainly being there's no comparison to by the time you get into like the 18th and 19th century and you're talking about like professional men who are not, aristocrats and not, workers, like lawyers and doctors and clergy and soldiers. But those are the four professions, of course, in England in the 18th and 19th century. But again, society had changed. Millers are not, did not have the same position in post-industrial revolution, even 18th century society that they had in the Middle Ages. But so Emily, Ted and Sam would be in the same social class, but there would be tension. There would likely be, and again, in a sense, the Sandymans are yet another example of the trope of the miller who is one of the people but separate from the other people, right? Like both because they're jerks and because they don't either one of them fit in, either Senior Sandyman or Ted Sandyman, right? And we can see a similar kind of friction between Sandyman and the gaffer and Ted Sandyman and Sam. They are in the same class. Like they notice they're drinking in the same pub, right? I mean, you don't see like Pippin's dad down the pub with them there. It's actually an interestingly, it's one of those things that people don't usually pick up on in the films. But of course, like the scenes where you have everybody, including Merry and Pippin and Frodo, all like uproariously involved in the, singing the Green Dragon song, right, in the Fellowship of the Ring film. No evidence that would have happened, right? Does Pippin like the pubs? Sure. Yeah. He enjoys the beer. But would they be a member of the company in the same way? If, with the conversation between the gaffer and Sandyman that happens in chapter 1, if Bilbo walked in to the pub, to the Ivy Bush that night and sat down, would conversation continue uninterrupted and him be welcomed like one of the locals? I don't think so. I think it's pretty clear he wouldn't, based on the conversation that they're having. They speak of him like a stranger, though he can't live more than a few hundred yards from the inn, probably. Anyway, so it's... But yes, at the end of the day, Edith, I think my answer would be, when you're thinking in terms of like general class parameters and stuff, Ted and Sam are peers. Ted and Sam are peers in ways that Sam and Pippin and Merry are not, and won't be until Sam is elevated at the end. They do join the company when invited by Bartleman at the Prancing Pony. Yes, it's true. But they're there joining as strangers. Strangers visiting their land, and therefore maybe, interested to, swap tales and learn new songs and things like that. It's not the same as saying that they would necessarily join the company at the Ivy Bush. Again, you listen to them talk, listen to, read Sandyman and Gaffer Gamgee's conversation in Chapter 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring about Bilbo, and just imagine Bilbo popping in, again, the movies seem to imagine them doing. Anyway, yeah. Vardendale, you're right. Very few jokes to be made about millers would be cruder than jokes made about millers in the Middle Ages, especially Chaucer, who was quite... needless to say, Chaucer's miller is the one that is always kind of first in my head, whether it's the miller from the Miller's Tale or the miller from the Reeve's Tale. Yes, Chaucer's millers are the ones that I always think of first. But anyway, all of that is beside the point. Let's start discussing our passage tonight. Actually, tonight is a relatively short one. This is one of those sections where I was having a harder time getting a good length of slide without interrupting where I didn't want to interrupt. The company now gathered together as close to the cliff as they could. It faced southwards, and near the bottom it leaned out a little, so that they hoped it would give them some protection from the northerly wind and from the falling stones. But eddying blasts swirled round them from every side, and the snow flowed down in ever denser clouds. They huddled together with their backs to the wall. Bill the pony stood patiently but dejectedly in front of the hobbits, and screened them a little. But before long the drifting snow was above his hocks, and it went on mounting. If they had had no larger companions, the hobbits would soon have been entirely buried. So, Jackie, exactly, there you go. Turns out their house does not have one wall, it has two walls, right? Do you call a house with no roof and two walls, one of which is your very faithful pony friend Bill, a house? Maybe. Okay, which part of a horse is a hock? It's the ankles below the knee, right? I think it's, in other words, I'm gathering the snow's like 4 inches, 4 to 6 inches. Like I don't know. It's getting deep, but it's not that deep yet. But it continues mounting, right? So yeah, between the first and second joint, right? Yes, right. The joint in the back leg that points backwards. Okay, there you go. Presumably the same as a ham hock. Yes. Oh, there we go, Trifle. Thank you very much. We have a picture of a horse there. Okay, right. So it's high. It's higher than that. About a foot deep or so. Going on half a meter. And yes, since Bill is only a pony, it would be he would be shorter. So probably less than a foot. But moving up towards a foot of snow and continuing to mount. Yes. Right. Okay. Right. Meow, I know that Bill is not a house. Certainly not in an Ice Moon of Hoth sense, right? I totally acknowledge that. but still, it is delightful. And it's another one of these sort of it's an unstated connection, right? Like nothing in that second paragraph there explicitly reminds us of Sam's complaint that he was just making 2 paragraphs before, right? About having only one wall and no roof. But the fact that the only thing that is pointed out, there are 2 things that are pointed out, right? One is that Bill is standing in front of them, and in front of the hobbits in particular, right? As if he is volunteering to be that second wall to their house. But of course, the other thing that's pointed out is that he's doing so dejectedly, right? Which just goes to show Bill, like Sam, is also low person on the totem pole and free to complain, right? Bill is at least as free as Sam is to, well, if not speak the awkward truths, emote them, right? Yes, exactly, Chris. He may swish his tail freely and give vent to the realities of the situation. I wouldn't go so far as to call him a naysayer, Emily. That seems to go too far, perhaps. But yes. Anyway, he is a really interesting kind of counterpart to Sam, especially, and again, in as much as he's actually practically responding to the complaint that Sam just made. If I could give words to Bill's dejection here, you remember, Sam was just saying shelter. You call this shelter, then one wall and no roof make a house. And Sam in return, or Bill rather in return, is basically saying, well, at least you have one wall. I have to be one wall, right? How would you like that? So Sam's grumble can actually be trumped here by Bill's complaint there. So there you go. Yes. Love Bill the Pony here. But notice the emphasis, despite this delightful little image that we get of Bill in the middle of it. Notice how that second paragraph brings things to the Hobbit's perspective. So in the first paragraph, we get the general description of the company and where they're standing. They've just been talking about this cliff and everything. Aragorn talked about it. Sam talked about it, right? Gandalf talked about how there was nothing else further up. And now we're told what they're doing, and we kind of pan outwards a little bit to see the situation. The company now gathered together as close to the cliff as they could. It faced southwards, and near the bottom it leaned out a little, so that they hoped it would give them some protection. Hoped it would give them some protection from the northerly wind and from the falling stones, as was saying. But it's no good. Well, apparently they don't get crushed by stones, but the eddying blasts swirled around them from every side, and the snow flowed down in ever denser clouds. This is another moment. There's a lot to like about the Peter Jackson film version of this moment, but I am put in mind of the of C.S. Lewis's essay called On Stories, where C.S. Lewis is griping about the film adaptation of Rider Haggard's King Solomon's Mines. And what he's complaining about is that in the film, so in the book King Solomon's Mines, near the end, the protagonist of the story and his companions find themselves trapped in the ancient tombs of these long dead, this long dead civilization. And they believe that they're trapped in the tombs and that they're going to slowly starve to death in the darkness, surrounded by the silent dead of this old ancient civilization. And C.S. Lewis describes the sort of suffocating feeling of that, like of the sort of the lingering dread that they're facing of that prospect. And his complaint about the adaptation, the film adaptation, is that the film adaptation felt that appeared to feel that was not a sufficiently engagingly cinematic way to go. So they made like a volcano erupt and like lava bust out everywhere. And as C.S. Lewis points out, they succeed in actually like increasing the danger that the protagonist is facing and escaping. And so in that way, they make it more exciting, more tense. But the point that he makes is that in doing so, they completely change the kind of story that it is, like the kind of experience that you have as an audience member in that moment. I can't help, so that's why I can't help but think of that example. C.S. Lewis's comments there when I think about the Peter Jackson adaptation of this moment. Peter Jackson, of course, replaces the huddling against the cliff with the snow, with the wind swirling around and the snow slowly mounting around them. He replaces that with a wizardly confrontation between Gandalf and Saruman over a long distance, culminating with a lightning-induced avalanche, which successfully buries the company without injuring them, right? And they're in danger. In a sense, they're in more danger, almost, it would seem. They were in more danger, maybe? I don't know. But I would say, like C.S. Lewis said, that it very much changes the quality, like the nature of the story. This paragraph here seems to me, really both of these paragraphs, seem to me to capture a good deal of the story that Tolkien was telling in this moment, like the kind of danger that they are in. And it's an interesting kind because it's not a running and jumping and heart-thumping terror-inducing situation. It's this sort of slow desperation, right? They hoped it would give them some protection, but eddying blasts swirled. Remember the way in which, by Aragorn's implication, the wind itself, the wind is causing the noise, but that does not make what Boromir said untrue. Aragorn suggests, at least I take Aragorn as suggesting, that the wind itself is subject to the malevolent voice that they're hearing, right? That the wind whistling in this wind whistling through these rocks is the voice of Caradhras, the Cruel, who is perhaps not working under Sauron's orders, but is for them in this moment just as dangerous and just as real a threat as Sauron, right, would be if he were here, or if he could reach this far exactly. But eddying blasts swirled around them from every side, and the snow flowed down in ever denser clouds. The snow not only continues, it continues to intensify. And then, as we've seen before, we get the one paragraph describing the outward circumstances, and then we get the second paragraph which describes the experience, what it was like, what it felt like to be there. And when we get that, we almost always, almost without exception, I will be keen to see if we ever do get an exception to this. I don't think we've had one so far, so I will say always get this from the point of view of the hobbits. They huddled together with their backs to the wall. And then we get the business about Bill the Pony, but before long the drifting snow was above his hocks, and it went on mounting. If they had had no larger companions, the hobbits would soon have been entirely buried. We see that statement, I think, in the context of this paragraph, is not, I think, intended to be a it's not intended to be like an objective statement. I think it's a reflection of their own thoughts and fears and dread. If they had had no larger companions is a glance ahead at what is about to happen. But the idea that the hobbits would soon have been entirely buried, I think is definitely, that is a Frodo reflection on the experience of what, like, looking back at it, huddling against there, feeling the wind blowing, seeing the snow. You're a hobbit. You've never seen snow like this before, right? So falling with this kind of speed and in this kind of wind, and you're just watching the snow creeping up the legs of Bill as he's standing dejectedly in front of you, right? Screening you from some of it so you can see him because he's your wind shelter, right? And you're just watching the snow mount and mount and mount. I mean, are not only you, but even the pony gonna be buried in snow before it's done? Not only does it not look like stopping, it's not even stopped increasing in the rapidity of the fall. So that sense of hopelessness is, I think, a really important element in this. That seems to be hopelessness in the sense of, like, there's nothing they can do. What can they do? This is not you can't even run away from this foe, right? It's hard to imagine any circumstance, even with the, even in the dell under Weathertop, when they were being attacked by the Black Riders, they were, standing back to back and drawing their swords. Not that there was any real hope that they would be much good. The hobbits necessarily would be much good against them. Though again, I think upon reflection, we see they're more than they think. But again, even there, against the Ringwraiths, there's more that they can do to protect themselves, to save themselves, at least to run, than now, when they are completely helpless and incapable of doing anything. So Vardendil, the supposed origin of the Misty Mountains. There is a brief passage in the Silmarillion which says that it is said that the Misty Mountains were thrust up by Morgoth in order to impede the riding of Orome. That's what the elves think. Anyway, other people might have other stories. Sorry. I'm going to stop talking about this now. As I'm flirting with territory, with things I'm not supposed to talk about in public. Anyway. So what does that tell us about Caradhras? It doesn't prove anything one way or the other, though it is, of course, I think, important that the idea of there are two things that are associated, therefore, with the Misty Mountains ab initio, right? Like from the beginning, and that is malice and to be a barrier. So if one, at least, of the Misty Mountains is still a cranky fella who spitefully tries to keep people from crossing the mountains, that would seem to be kind of in character, right? That would seem to be in keeping. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that the spirit of Caradhras is a servant of Morgoth? was a servant of Morgoth or was corrupted by Morgoth. I don't think we can say any one of those things with certainty. What I do think is that it does seem to fit into the spirit of the thing, and I don't think that that's an accident. Gildawen, exactly. He could just be a cranky old dude, exactly. And as Caradhras says, not all jerks work together. That's just what Aragorn was saying, right? Just because, he seems to be acting kind of Sauron-esque and working against the enemies of Sauron doesn't mean that he's in league with Sauron necessarily. He can just be independently cranky. Yeah, I do agree, Fourth Dauntless, that the spirits of created things in Middle-earth reflect the wills and purposes of their makers. But of course, the spirit of Caradhras, I think, would be different. Right. Bjarnasonar says, the enemy of my enemy might also just be an asshole. It's true. Yeah. So, but anyway, Fourth Dauntless, back to the point that you were making. I agree with you, and I think that's an interesting thing to think about. What I would say, though, is that there's Caradhras is an independent spirit. Is not the spirit of Caradhras will not be something that is made by Morgoth, right? Presumably, he is one of the Ainur, right? There were many spirits, some great and some much lesser. That's clear from the very beginning of the Book of Lost Tales. It's explicit in the Book of Lost Tales, and characteristically of Tolkien becomes less and less explicit as time goes on, though that does not necessarily mean that the way that he thinks about it has changed, just that the way that he expresses it perhaps might have changed. But the idea that the natural world is full of little spirits who have, many of them, some kind of affiliation with one of the great spirits, like sprites and sylphs and brownies and things like that, which are all mentioned by name in the Book of Lost Tales. And then, of course, you've got, well, not only Bombadil, but even more importantly, in my opinion, you've got Goldberry, right? Exactly. And it seemed, and remember I was talking about, when we were in Holland and Legolas's speech about the rocks remembering and stuff, and I was recalling how in the first draft of this chapter, I said that chapter as if that were a different chapter. Feels like a different chapter, but we're still there. Legolas was explicitly talking about the spirits that live in Holland compared to the spirits that live, the woodland spirits with whom he is friendlier from back home. So yes, I do believe that there is, Middle-earth does seem to be invested. It doesn't mean that the mountain has come alive in some sense. I don't think that that's true. I think that these are spirits that have come in from the outside, largely. But anyway, yeah, I think that so Caradhras will not have been a product of Morgoth, even if Morgoth did. Even if Morgoth did make the Misty Mountains and make them for the reason that he did, but one could imagine Caradhras. If we had a whole backstory, right, of Mr. Caradhras, right, it would be, who knows, maybe, you could imagine a spirit who settled in this nice, lush plain, right, and is like, this is great. I love this patch of land. I think this is going to be where I'm going to stay. And then Morgoth comes in and is like, mountain range, and Caradhras is like, and now I'm on a mountain, right? oh, I'm kind of cranky about that now. And anyway, I'm also kind of influenced by the general spirit of crankiness and impediment to travel with which this whole area has been invested by Morgoth. So, that doesn't make him any happier. Anyway, that's a possible right version of Caradhras' backstory. So could there be influence there? Yeah, possibly. But again, I think Aragorn is pretty clear. He's very clear that we mustn't assume that just because something is malicious and cranky that it's in league with Sauron. Though, of course, it doesn't prove that he's not either, right? He doesn't know. And when Gandalf said, we hadn't come back to this, I've been meaning to come back to this statement. Remember when Gimli is scoffing? When Gimli is scoffing at Boromir's statement about Sauron, bringing snow down from the north 300, to trouble them 300 leagues away. His arm has grown long indeed if he can do this. Gandalf immediately says, his arm has grown long, right? And I take Gandalf to say, don't rule out the fact. Don't rule out the possibility. Could Sauron have in some way reached out to Caradhras, right? Hey, Caradhras, can you do me a solid and keep anybody... Could you just close the pass right now? Right? I'd take it as a kindness, Mr. Caradhras, if you would not let anybody cross the pass, please. Right? You think you could send him a crank call, Blancmon? That's possible. It's possible. Now, again, is Gandalf asserting that he knows that that's the case? That Sauron has formed some kind of alliance with Caradhras? No, he doesn't know. But I think he doesn't rule it out either. And going back to Boromir's original statement, this is why I think Gimli is misreading Boromir's original statement. He's not just saying, I'm imagining that Sauron the Dark Lord causes every bad thing that happens in the world. I'm being like vaguely superstitious, about this. That would be it would be one way to understand what he's saying. I can understand why Gimli might think that, but I don't think that that's even what Boromir meant. Remember, he said he has strange powers and many allies, and that I think is what Gandalf is picking up on when he's like, "Hey, let's not laugh at this now." Right? His arm has grown long. Right. Merlin's parents, I agree, it would be a little bit strange for Gimli to misinterpret anything. That would be out of character, but there we go. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Crotcher Eric, we do have to keep in mind, we also don't know. I mean, into all these policies comes the Balrog, right? There's been we will be told later that under Caradhras a terror slept, right? So, how has it affected the worldview of the spirit of Caradhras to, be the home of the Balrog, especially one that had its coming out party over 1,000 years ago, right? One who has been, has sort of declared himself, right? Would that have affected him? I almost said infected, which would have been, but I'll go ahead and say it. To affect him, to infect him in some way. It's possible. It's possible. Exactly. Gnawing his roots for a couple thousand years. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, Right? Caradhras says, well, now I feel bad for the jerk mountain. You know, yeah, like, here we go, Caradhras. Let's take this one step further. What if the causality goes the other way around? That is, what if the Balrog settled down there because Caradhras was already such a jerk he felt right at home, right? What if the reason he was sleeping under Caradhras was he got there and he was like, oh, this is my kind of place, right? So he's not really been influencing Caradhras. Rather, Caradhras was accommodating him, right? Who knows? Yeah, it is possible, right, JJ, that the poor innocent Balrog was corrupted by the mean mountain. Hey, maybe he was repentant, right? We don't know, right? He fled from Thangarodrim. Maybe he was going to repent, right? And then, but then he spent a couple 1,000 years under grumpy Caradhras, and like there went that idea, right? Exactly. Caradhras provided a nurturing environment. Exactly. Nurturing of crankiness. Yeah. And yes, I do also acknowledge we don't exactly know what the nameless things are and what their gnawing might, how their gnawing might influence the mountain as well. But anyhow, you still feel a little sorry for the mountain. Yeah, well, I think that's an okay place to be, Caradhras. I don't. Let me bring it back to this. A lot of people. A question I've gotten many times. If Tom Bombadil is good, why doesn't he destroy Old Man Willow? Why does he let Old Man Willow keep doing what he's doing? Old Man Willow's awful. And he's not only personally awful, he's like influencing the entire forest. He's making the whole forest evil, right? I mean, if there is a bad apple that is wrecking that whole bushel, we know who it is, right? Even Tom Bombadil knows who it is. He's not unaware of this. He's not oblivious to it, right? So why doesn't Tom Bombadil just throw down with Old Man Willow? And I think part of the answer to that, Old Man Willow is like Caradhras. I think in the two of them, I think we see two fairly similar kinds of spirits, I think. Yeah, I mean, we certainly did talk about this before, but I wanted to talk about it in this context because to me it seems to be the spirits themselves. Caradhras, I'm coming back to you feeling bad for the mountain. The spirits themselves, the spirits of these areas, are not exactly innocent. It's not like their fault. It's not like we should just feel bad for Old Man Willow, right? And be like, oh, poor Old Man Willow, he's the victim here. Like, no, he's a bad egg at this point. He is what Treebeard would call bad right through, right? And there's no two ways about that. But they don't seem to have the same kind of agency that others have. They're in a different kind of category, I think. I mean, they seem to be in a different kind of category. Yes, they're part of the music, Aspen. But yeah, no, hang on. The reason I'm talking about this is that when we did talk about this before, we were talking about Tom Bombadil. I'm not talking about Tom Bombadil right now. I want to talk. Yes, Tom Bombadil is master. What does that mean? That's what we talked about before. That's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about these spirits as spirits. I'm talking about like what it means to be a genius loci in Tolkien's world, right? And I think that there are some... Caradhras is an interesting case study in some ways. Is he evil? Is he a bad guy? Is he, on Team Melkor? He might be. Maybe he volunteered. Maybe he's a cranky spirit who was a servant of Melkor from the beginning, and when Melkor said, hey, I'm erecting this mountain range to stop Orome. Oh, wait, but I need somebody... There's a pass here in the mountains, and I need somebody to look over that and intermittently give people crap when they go over this pass. And maybe Caradhras was maybe he has a different origin story. Maybe he's one of the malicious servants of Melkor and is like, I shall take up residence. I shall adopt this mountain, right? I shall take up residence in this mountain, and I promise to give people unilaterally a hard time for the rest of creation, right? I mean, like, that's maybe. Maybe he is a bad guy. Maybe he is like just an evil spirit on the side of Melkor. But again, Aragorn raised the possibility that he isn't necessarily like that. That he might not be it. And again, even Old Man Willow, like going back to Treebeard's comment, he talks about that sometimes, like, Huorns will go bad, right? And that they can be bad right through, not their wood, right? Remember, but their hearts are black. And he says that kind of thing seems to spread. He talks about it like a disease, like some kind of tree blight. It's like a moral tree blight. To listen to Treebeard talk about it. What he does not do is say, therefore I have to put them down like mad dogs, right? He doesn't suggest anything like that. It seems to be sad, but it seems to be sad, but it doesn't, like, it seems to sadden him that it happens. He doesn't approve, and he seems to... There's evidence that the Ents exert some control over the Huorns to prevent them, even those that have gone bad, to prevent them from indulging any of their darker tendencies. But he's... Yeah, the Ase parallel is interesting. It's complicated. So Ase, of course, you'll remember, the junior lieutenant of Ulmo. And the two things that are relevantly interesting about Ase are, first, that he goes bad, right? He is briefly tempted into rebellion. Melkor tries to pervert him by offering him the top job if he'll join his side. But then he comes back. He repents and comes back. But there's more than that. There's also the fact that Ase's job is violence. He's the one who's in charge of coastal storms. And he just loves wrecking stuff. That is part of the music. So yes, Ase being the Maya of shipwrecks, basically, right? Doesn't make him evil. It doesn't mean he's not part of the music. He is part of the music. The violence of Ase is part of the music. But I do not believe that Tolkien's world is a simply dualistic world where, like, evil things and good things all have their place and you can't have one without the other. That is not Tolkien's world. Anyway, getting a little bit further afield here. But it's all interesting. I mean, it's all related to this question of Caradhras, which is, I mean, the question of the origin story of Caradhras is a really fascinating one to me. If I had to guess, I don't think he's an evil spirit. If I had to guess what his origin story is, of the two I gave, one where he's a genius loci and a genius loci gone bad or at least gone grumpy over time is origin story A. Origin story B is minion of Melkor, who takes up that position in order to serve Melkor by making things hard to people, for people. I would favor origin story A all day long. That feels more right to the text, to the overall picture of the text, and what we see of these kinds of spirits. Yes, Boromir's horn, that I can buy. He seems to be something like a mountain horn whose heart is blackening. Yeah, that's why I was comparing him to Old Man Willow, because it feels to me like a similar kind of situation, where you have nothing's evil in the beginning, right? You have a strong spirit who's attached to this particular locale and who's just gotten cranky over the years. Caradhras has been called the Cruel for a long time, right? We don't know exactly when he went bad, how bad exactly he went. But yeah, something like that seems to have happened. That's yeah. Freebird, I don't know why, as the spirit of a mountain, he would have the power over the weather in the mountain. But everything about these passages suggests that he does. Or let me be one step more cautious than that and say everything about these passages seem to me to suggest that the characters believe that he is. Aragorn seems to... That's how I take Aragorn's "I do call it the wind, but you're not wrong" statement. Yes, it's the wind. That's how he talks. Right? Yeah. He would have the power of the earth, but what does that mean? Like, we don't know the boundaries of what his power would be. What a mountain spirit's power would be. I don't know that we have reasons to assume that would only, like earthquakes, yes, wind, no. I'm not saying there's no logic to that. I'm just saying that seems to me a logic that we're imposing on it, whereas the text does not in any way suggest any kind of there's logic to it, but the text doesn't make any suggestion there. And instead the text makes every implication that at least Aragorn and probably Gandalf accept the idea that creating storms and blowing, even that first paragraph, they're hoping they would get protection from the north. The wind is from the north, right? And the cliff faces southwards. So they're like, great, the wind is blowing from the north. We're facing south. We should be safe here, right? Oh, you can't escape me that easily, right? The eddying blasts swirl around from every side. There is malice to this here. Belongspond, I also want to hear some of Gimli's songs that have been written about Caradhras. Absolutely. Yeah, Feanaros, Feonaro's Pizza, I agree. He says, I think we can think of Caradhras as being bound to a place rather than confined to a material. He's not the rock of the mountain. He's everything that makes up that place. Yeah, I mean, look, think about this. Think about Old Man Willow. Old Man Willow doesn't just control his tree stuff. Think of Old Man Willow whispering of sleep, right? Yeah. Tomas, that's a really good point. Tomas is talking about how some mountains can kind of create their own local weather. Yeah, that's true. And one could easily imagine that therefore being sort of extended to this idea. If there is a genius loci, you can, it's certainly easy to understand why, if you believed there was a spirit in the mountain, that one of the things that it would be doing is sending bad weather to you. Right. Yeah. Right. For Thomas, I agree. Creating sleep in the shade is exactly the sort of things that normal trees do too. Yes, except turned to evil, right, by Old Man Willow. But again, it's sort of not exactly a power that the tree normally has, right? But it's a thing associated with trees, just as storms in the mountains are things that are associated with mountains, right? Yeah. It is possible, Freebird, that the mountain is working in concert with some other entity. That's a possibility that Aragorn absolutely leaves open. That Gandalf and Gandalf does not want them to ignore the possibility that Sauron could be involved, even if indirectly, right? But yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it's late. That's okay. We're good with this passage anyway. The next passage is Frodo's dream, right? Oh, yes, it is. Another little dream from Frodo. Okay. So next week we shall be back to discuss Frodo's little vision, dream, hallucination moment. And Boromir takes the next step in his relationship with Aragorn and Gandalf. That will be next week. So join us next week. And then unfortunately after that, I'll be gone for 2 weeks. Well, it's hardly unfortunate because it will be in the interest of traveling to and from Osmoot. Both of those next 2 Tuesdays are going to be my travel days en route from Australia. So I won't be around for the next 2 weeks after that, but I will be here next week. So we will have the rest of the next Caradhras passage next week, and then 2 weeks off. But it's field trip time now. So thanks to those of you who were able to join us for the book discussion here this evening. And we're going to continue our eye-opening field trips of Caradhras that I've never seen before. All right. Hang on a second. Let me get my game fixed here. There we go.
Wow, another full house tonight.
Yes. Okay, sorry, coming right back in here.
This is where all the cool kids hang out.
Yes.
That's it.
One of us.
We accept you, one of us.
Google gobble. Get everyone in here.
Okay. All right, I'll be back in momentarily.
Assuming you're hopping because you want to be added. That's
yeah.
all right.
Oh, meow. I am so looking forward to my ridiculously long flights. It's going to be awesome. I love long flights. The longer the better. And this would be the longest flights I've ever been on, and I can't wait. I am so excited.
Listen to all of the Silmarillion, probably.
No, it's going to be a pair of writing retreats. My favorite thing to do on airplanes is write my book. I get so much writing done on airplanes.
Really?
Oh yeah, even relatively short flights. It's like literally my favorite environment. Like if I need to get writing done at home, I have to like pretend I'm on an airplane. Seriously, it's the best.
Oh, you can, like, there's videos for that. It's pretty great.
Yeah. It's the best.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get so much done. It's gonna be fantastic.
Yeah. Me, I have to put on cafe soundtracks and pretend I can afford to sit in a Starbucks all day.
Yeah, it's like two like weekend retreats. Oh man, it's gonna be so good. Okay,
Man,
so
I'm too distracted. I always want to look out the window.
yeah,
my
I
favorite.
sometimes get distracted by other people's movies, but you know, apart from resisting that temptation, that's pretty much my only distraction. Okay, so I think we're going to meet at the convoy again. I think this will probably be the last time because my goal is to get down to Sarn Ford and get the. I think there's a stable master there, so probably another milestone. So we will.
Yes, there is a milestone there.
I figured.
Oh, good.
So. All right. So yes, we were looking last time at the quite remarkable relationship between the historic land of Caradhras at its height and the tombs of the ancient dead that were around there first. That whereas the connection between the people of Caradhras and the Barrow Downs seemed to be, at least I would have thought initially, that it was at least, we're told that they take refuge there in their last days, like when they're under siege. But it seems like their relationship with the dead and with the Barrows of the ancient dead seemed to go beyond merely taking refuge there in time of need. And they seem to have built their city in the midst of the whole necropolis of the dead there, which is just fascinating. Again, even in the Barrow Downs, you remember in the southern Barrow Downs, we found that one large ruin from Caradhras.
Yep.
And that looked like a you know, the stronghold that was built there when they were under siege, you know, at the end. That's how I took it, you know, when we were looking at that before. But all of this stuff, like, not only, and the way in which we were speculating, it looked like maybe there were, you know, mausoleums. They were kind of like merging with the ancient dead there. And anyway, it was fascinating and kind of creepy. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's head south. How much? So, shall we follow the road? What do you think? Let's
We'll
lay
get there
our
more
plans.
quickly if we do, actually.
Well, I know, but that's the question: is that a thing we want? We went across Tirngorth. Oh no, we wanted to go down to. Oh, we forgot.
Withy window.
Yeah, with the window. That's right.
Withy window. Hang on. Change of plans.
I was waiting for you to remember.
Yeah. Okay. We're going north. Forget it. We're going north. Can we go overland to the Withy window?
Yep.
Can we get into the old forest productively?
Yep.
Yeah, I recall we started to get there from the first one.
Okay. So how do we get there? Can we just like cut across the hills here?
Yep.
All right. Let's go into the old forest and find the Withy window. That shouldn't be hard because all paths lead that way down to the Withy window, I'm told. So, by reliable sources.
It'll steer us there. Don't worry.
Yeah, if we head into the old forest. Okay, now Tirn Gorthad. All right, we're headed. We go over the hill. All right. This is still looking rather Barrow Downs-ish up here.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, that might be a cliff. Kids.
All right. Looks like we could maybe get down here if we wanted to.
Oh, yeah. Let's try that. Ooh,
Oh, down you
there we
go.
Yep. No, it's broken. Hang on.
Can't make it across over there?
Oh, probably. I just put my bandages on, that's all.
Okay. Let's see. Oh. There's that bridge I didn't... Wait. Is that the bridge we crossed?
Yeah.
That is the bridge we crossed.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Sark One Bridge.
Okay.
We were,
Anyway, did you get down to the forest that way?
You can just swim across the river if you wanted to.
Oh. Okay.
They only made one portal to other lands in all of this new content, and it's at Sarn Ford. Everything else is overland somehow.
Okay. That's fine.
Part of it is that it's dark out and I can't see anything.
Well, yes, we're dark in the
Don't
shady
anybody follow
areas
me.
here.
Yeah, no, this is advanced darkness.
Yeah, so if we go down to the river, right?
Yep.
Yep.
You just swim across the river. Alassa doesn't actually say it's the Withy Wendell, though. That makes me sad.
Now entering Southern Old Forest. There we go.
I love it when you break your ankles when you fall in the water.
Oh, we're in combat with something. What's going on here? Something follow us up here?
We might have lobies with us who are aggroing the local mobs. There's a barrow route.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. I want to go in.
Look out for each other, guys.
Can we go further in? Can we get into the
Yep.
Old Forest map?
Yes, you can.
All right.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'd be better on foot since we're going to be going in and around.
Yeah, I was. That's why I didn't mount up again when we went across. Oh, still in the. Okay, so Southern Old Forest is in the. Still the new map. All right. Well, it's not as dark in here as I would have thought it might be. This is really quite lovely.
Playing Valheim too long. I keep pushing shift to run and it doesn't work.
Are the mobs here similar to the Old Forest mobs?
Oh yeah, there's horns wandering around.
Horns, I saw one, and their roots and...
Yep.
Yeah.
And spiders, because of course there's got to be spiders.
Of course.
Right.
It's like I know there's horns, but in this visible distance here, they still take you by surprise when you come right on them. It's kind of silent.
Yes.
It's kind of like Silent Hill right now. This is how bad the fog was on New Year's Eve. Like looking through a sheet of toilet paper.
Am I looking up at the southern edge of the Barrow Downs over there?
I think
Yes,
so.
you
Yeah,
are.
that's silhouette trees. Yeah, there we go. Southern
Yeah,
Barrow
I'm
Downs.
seeing the ruin of... Yep, there we go.
Yay.
Now we're in the Barrow Downs, which... I thought that's where we were in the map, on the pathway to go through to the Old Forest, right?
Yes.
Indeed so.
Yeah.
Not quite, though. This is the southern end of the Barrow Downs. This was made accessible some time ago to link the southern Barrow Downs to Old Forest. And now they've made a different path as well.
I recall being surprised when I was able to get into this area.
Yeah.
Whew.
Okay.
Deep, 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 deep. Whoa, what's this big old tree here? What is this?
That's a who one, isn't it?
Is it? Nah, it's just a big old tree covered in lichen.
Whole tree, okay. Uh-oh, can we get through here? Uh-oh. Hit a dead end.
Oh, yeah, we're getting into that part.
You can go due south.
Oops, spiders.
You can go due south? That might be... Oh, wait, hang on. I just entered the old forest.
Oh, yeah.
Can we get through? I don't think so.
Should
I get through that way.
Oh, no. So many memories of being lost in here.
I know. Yeah. No, I don't think we can get through.
No, not in this spot.
Right, because here we're coming up to
And
the
either-
Barrow Downs themselves.
Right, so the way you normally go down is you go south and cut to the west.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
You wind
let's
up
go
in that
south then.
spider den.
Right, the spider den.
You want to get closer to the river.
Right. Okay, so
I
we'll go
marked you
south.
so we can follow you. Yeah, follow the big orange wolf paw.
Well, yeah. Okay, right.
Wait for folks to catch up.
Yep.
So south we head from here where I couldn't go west. Yes, Amathorn, I have to say, I was always suspecting that the maze that is the old forest might change periodically.
Fence? It's a fence.
Ooh, yeah, hey, look at this. We found another... Ooh.
Oh, we've seen graveyards like this. It's a human.
Oh. Who's this lady? Henbran.
Henbran.
Huh. Okay, well, your house is interesting. What a cute little house.
Half expected to be made of gingerbread.
Yeah, not identical in architectural style to really anything that we've seen.
And right next to a cheerful little cemetery.
Yeah, very nice, cheerful little cemetery.
Oh, there's a nice treasure cache over here. I picked up a polished stone of the Withywindle. What?
What in the what? What?
Oh, it's a level 25 pocket item. Neat.
Oh,
There you
cute.
go.
It's
Oh,
a
like
little bit
that was-
strange.
Felt like that was a pair of shoes.
You got a rock. But normally treasure caches are supposed to give you something that's on level for you, but it's apparently on level for the zone.
Maybe it's just a, hey, you found us reward.
Maybe.
Right.
What I'm
Hey,
fascinated here is she obviously lives here because she's got these little farming plots. She's growing
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, she got some
Uh-huh.
raised beds here. Huh. Now I noticed that we're down across the Cardolan border again here.
Mm-hmm.
We went far enough south. Can we cut west?
Yes, we can.
Where?
Yes, we'll go back up the path and then just cut west.
Okay. No, through here.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. Okay, so back in the Southern Barrow Downs.
Now we're in the spider den in the old forest.
Right on. Ah, the spider den.
From cottagecore to hardcore.
Okay. Oh man. Vague memories of how terrifying this was when I was
I'm
like...
sorry, the spiders surprised me. They all just dropped down like Cirque du Soleil.
like they do. Okay.
Big as the wolf spiders we have in Virginia.
All right, so hang on a second. So I'm looking at the map, And here we are in the Breland. Okay. No. Hang on. Stop. Map again. All right. So I think that other river was not the Withywindle.
It's not.
So are we going to take the Withywindle down to the Brandywine and then follow the Brandywine down?
You can do that. Yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
fun.
to Sarn Ford? Yeah, let's do that. Okay. All right, so that means we got to cut up to get to the Withywindle. Let's go to Tom Bombadil's house.
It's always a good place to start when you're lost in here.
Yeah. Like now.
You have to go south and cut back up.
Well, you know what we got to do? We got to sing.
Oh, Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadillo.
Hello. Right
By the water of wood and hill, by the reed and willow, by fire, sun and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for need is near us.
I got key.
Except
Okay,
we're
wait,
about to hit the Brandywine already.
Oh, yeah, no. We
Oh
want to go north
boy,
from here.
aptly
Yeah, this
named.
is going too far south.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah,
is new. This used to be closed.
Yeah, this is
Right.
aptly named the Baranduil.
The fact that you could swim through from
Well,
here.
Yeah, this used to
You
be
couldn't
a
before.
wall.
Yeah, that's what I
Exactly.
remember.
No, I just meant that it was brown.
It is very brown.
Right. Okay. Right. So we come up here and then cut this way and then cut that way, and the next thing you know, we're there. It's more or less how it works. Oh,
Something
yeah,
like
I
that.
remember
Chocolate
getting.
River? Where do you get your ideas from?
I remember a quest item being in that glade. Oh, there's one of the flowers.
Yep. Anyone doesn't have a flower, there's one right there.
And those names will appear in later game content as well.
Cool.
Because those are the Entwives' names.
Yes. Okay, can we go right up here? Will we come out by Tom's house if we come off to the right here and then
Mm-hmm.
take a left later on?
Yeah, the new Old Forest map is actually pretty accurate to where paths are.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, that was
tell you
less
how many
true in the old days.
I used to beat my head quite a lot against trees and hedgerows.
Yes. A
On the
path!
Bangala.
Yeah, paths and glowing white stones are always a good sign.
No, we've not gotten to the white stones yet, but
Oh,
And
another
the
flower.
left.
this is going to lead us to a dead end if we're not careful, as I...
It will. But
Suspect,
then we
yeah.
bang a left and go to the Withywindle.
Right.
Yep,
Did they
here's the
change
bridge.
Tom's house?
The
No.
footbridge.
They changed Tom's singing voice, though. A lot of people are upset about it.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
Because he actually sings now.
cool.
He's going to be inside because it's after dark.
Yep.
Right.
And Goldberry is out in the back. As she should be.
Okay. Gosh, I haven't been here in years.
Oh, there's an building now.
No, that used to be there.
Did it?
Mm-hmm.
It has been in some time since I've been out here.
Yeah, me too.
Gotta say, it is one of the coziest looking things in the dark. I also love the theme. That's the one I have in my house all the time.
Yeah. Awesome.
Once upon a time, Cordovin played it on his flute on his stream. Somebody sent him sheet music for it.
Tom Bombadil's house is very nice.
Clearly, we're not standing about. We're having a party.
Hey, he started the dancing. It wasn't our fault.
Yeah.
We're just being good guests.
It's contagious.
That's it.
I like to think the minute he started singing, we couldn't help ourselves.
All right. Well, it's getting late. We should head towards the river. We still got
Yes.
some swimming to do.
Yeah.
Or just
a
running
Okay.
along the shore.
Just a nice break from all the fog and spiders.
Exactly. And hey, it's always good to celebrate making it to Tom's house through the woods. Especially when you come by such a very indirect route as we did.
Yeah. Well, this still feels a bit like a 6-year anniversary party a bit. There's so many people here and going back to all our old haunts.
Yeah. Uh-oh. I'm stuck.
So
Stuck under the bridge. Help!
Don't go under the bridge.
Don't go under the bridge. Okay.
And save- Yep.
Good old Willow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't
it's
linger. Do not
Appropriate
linger.
that we should come here because we were just talking about you today.
Yeah. Well, and you were talking about, like, you know, Tom Bombadil and Old Man Willow, and I kept thinking of the line from The Last Unicorn when the unicorn was regarding the harpy,
Uh-huh.
and she said, I can't, you can't capture me any more than you can capture her, and the fact that she was evil, but she couldn't hurt her because they were part of the same magic. They were two halves, same coin.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think with one of the reasons that I was thinking about Tom and the Willow is we didn't exactly ask this question at the time in these same terms. That is, what's the origin story of Old Man Willow?
Not even Elrond knew that.
Right, not even Elrond would know, but I bet you Tom Bombadil does. Like what?
I forgot it.
Well, that's always possible, but anyway, my point is just like, what did Old Man Willow used to be? Like, it's surely, I get nothing was evil in the beginning. Surely there was a time before Old Man Willow's heart went black, to use Treebeard's words, and if so, maybe he was quite different back then. Maybe one of the reasons that Tom Bombadil doesn't throw down with him is because he remembers him as he was.
Or
Because
sympathizes with his anger. I mean,
yeah,
it could
because
have been after the Great Bonfire or something like that.
Right.
Or
We did
something,
it.
or a similar event.
whoa. Why is the
Well-
map here just the Middle Earth map? That's really funny.
Because we're in a place that doesn't have this
That
is new
isn't
stuff.
in the map. Wow.
We are nowhere and everywhere.
So we
We're in
keep
the
going
Hero Derby
downstream.
monsters part.
Yeah,
Huh?
you used to not be able to get past the bears. It used to be a dead end.
I
Oh,
tried
right, past
so
the
hard
bears.
to get past the bears. I tried so hard. Yeah.
You used to be able to look peek through the trees and see a little something there, but it was like there
Are we
wasn't really
going
anything.
over waterfall?
This set of rapids looks like a place you should not be able to swim.
Yeah, I want a good kayak, a good elven boat.
We look like we're swimming upstream, like trout.
Yeah, exactly. It's giving me flashbacks.
Waiting
the
for a
fair
bear
now.
to be standing somewhere to get us.
Alaska. Okay, this is it. This is the junction where
Yeah,
the withing window comes.
so cool.
Okay.
No, you just have to get down the Sarn Ford from here. So
Easy
to the
peasy, lemon squeezy.
to the northwest, you could swim your way to Bamfurlong if you really wanted to.
Yes, we do.
These where you see the tall reeds, that is a boundary you can't cross there. So this is future areas because that's the South Farthing.
Right.
Oh,
Straight across the
yeah.
river is
Oh, yeah.
South Farthing.
And we have
Yeah.
one of these stone cairns right here. The the mile marker thingies.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think we'd see one off this far off the road.
Hmm.
That is intriguing. Yeah, that
Though,
does give more weight to your mile marker theory.
well, or to, yeah, because I mean, it is very much like the other one. Because the stone of those seems to be older than, well, cruder in any case, than like the road itself,
Mhm.
you know.
It's not native to here. Look at all the bluestone.
Yeah. I keep wanting to go to the map to see where I am, and I just can't.
We're in interstitial space.
We are.
Liminal
Just
space.
swim around this nook. Get back to the shore. Think so. I have to go
Oh,
ways
man.
down to get back to the shore, though.
Every time I'm in those liminal space videos, I always get eaten by a monster. Oh my God.
I
I'm
think
going to zoom out.
the idea is just as long
keep
as we
on
keep
swimming.
going downstream, we'll be
Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming.
we'll be good. It would have been, you know, what would have been an awesome Easter egg is for there to be like a little abandoned boat down at the junction of the Withywindle and the Brandywine. That would have been cool. It says a little reference to the Bombadil Goes Boating poem.
You have to be capsized, though. Yeah, I was going to say, beware of the reeds. That's where the water spirits like to hang out and pull you under.
Yeah.
Right. But that's so it's yeah, no, still not on the map.
Swimming in a gorgeous cup of tea.
It is. Well, anyway, thinking about the you know, the genii locorum as we were today, it just you can see that the Lotro developers have the same kind of idea of Middle Earth, that there are many local spirits dwelling in most of the places around Middle Earth, and occasionally we see them, and occasionally they've been corrupted. I mean, the idea which in my memory originates, I don't remember seeing this happen anywhere before we got to Gartha Garwin in the Lone Lands. The idea of local conditions causing the spirits of the land to become corrupt. And that, of course, becomes a motif through many areas in Lotro. You know, they've sort of played versions of that same story in many other places. But it strikes me as a very plausible kind of thing. And I mean, I almost brought it up when we were talking about Caradhras today, and I'm like, for people who haven't played Lotro, it's going to require too much backstory, so I won't talk about it now. But I do think that it is fascinating the way that Lotro has constructed it, and I have always believed that I've always believed that they're, you know, from the Red Maid on, you know, in developing those storylines.
Oh yeah.
That they have really, that they're really leaning into something that is genuinely present, though pretty deeply submerged in the books.
Yeah, and
Penlove,
it's always
yes,
about it's always about it's
Yeah.
always about betrayal of some sort of contract, either between the
Yeah.
people who live in the lands.
Yeah, with like
or,
sort of the Oathbreaker idea that is often involved. But even like the way, well, again, with the original Red Maid story, you know, how it was about the blood that was shed, like the fact that there are consequences even to the land itself when the land has been, I mean, it's even like that is in its way even an almost biblical idea of like the blood of Abel crying out from the ground, right? You know, that when
life.
yeah, when blood is shed, you know, when battle is, when especially when like unjust battle is being waged, and the blood of, if not innocents, at least, like the blood of people who didn't ought to be killed, is staining the ground, then it's gonna have an impact on on the land itself and on the spirits of that land.
Absolutely. There's almost that implication that when the old force.
Corey?
Oh, there is a boat. There's a boat.
There is a boat.
There's a yeah. Where's
Look.
Right below me.
Right by me.
we're pretty far
Sunken.
south. A sunken boat?
It's a
Yes,
sunken
look
boat.
down.
Well, that can't be Tom Bombadil's boat. It was much more seaworthy than that. Besides which, he wouldn't have come
Well,
all
there's
the way
another
down
one on
here.
shore.
Would he? Oh. He wouldn't have come all the way down here. He would have gone, because he was going to Bam Furlong. So we've gone rather...
There's
The
a
wrong
forest path.
Yeah.
I don't recall where.
Do we...
Oh wait, it says I'm not the fellowship leader.
Whoa.
Hello.
Whoa.
I have no
There's
idea
an
what this
instance
is.
door.
Oh, it's an instance. Woe of the
It's-
Willow.
Oh, this is where it is.
Yeah.
That was an older instance. Well, not older, but fairly new. But
Yeah, it says-
was,
Yeah, it says most of us aren't eligible to enter.
yeah,
so.
it's a fellowship. Instance.
What is it, like a 3-man or...
I forget. It's in the instance finder.
It's also level locked.
Yeah.
We found your boat. I don't remember how far south this is. We should be getting close to it though.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
But we're still not... Even that instance isn't on a map.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we keep swimming, and we'll end up at
Yep.
Sarn Ford.
Well, I pulled up the Caradhras map, and we're next to the words Old Forest in the northwest corner of the map.
Right, so if we zoom in a bit here, yeah.
Yeah, Tom is in that
yeah, we're
instance,
getting there.
Tarkim says.
Oh, fun.
We're getting there.
Yeah, it is a bit ever swimmish, but this is for science.
Exactly. Besides which, the primary reason that apart from the fact that you had to schlep across that lake so many times pursuing quests, but even apart from that, you weren't going anywhere. It was just like local travel that was inconvenient, right? There we are back on the map now.
Or
But,
behind a paywall.
But here, this is not Everswim. This is exploration. This is...
Yeah, an adventure, as my dad
This
would
is
say.
an adventure, exactly.
And we can finally get back on shore and
Yep.
ride to our destination if you prefer.
Yeah, it might be a little faster.
Yeah, my arms are getting tired. No, seriously, I'm like getting sympathy pains.
There's a house here.
Yeah, a little dock, little house,
Little boat.
little boat. Another nice lady
This
with
is a
her
proper
raised beds.
cottage.
Ooh, why
Yeah.
do we have ouchies around us?
What do we have? Who?
Oh, there's a little flashy ball. There it is. There it is. I couldn't figure out why we all have little red rings around us.
There's a
Huh.
horn down to the south.
Yep.
Ah,
Who ain't bothering anybody right now?
well, these little folks in the woods. Okay. Oh, hang on. Oh,
I don't know what people are using for all this blue clothing they have.
oh, dyes? You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. What have we here? Something
Oh, you
which
went
is
up the hill.
not yet. Sorry for. Oh dear.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, there's
I was
spiders.
waiting for you to find this.
Oh,
There'd be
dear.
spiders here, just so you know.
Netting glade, huh?
Oh,
Maybe it's something we should visit next time,
Yeah. Let's do
because
that.
it's almost 12:30.
It is. Yeah, it's super late. Super late.
So-
Heading back to the river. Going
Yeah,
straight to
let's-
Sarn Ford and purposefully ignoring interesting things from here, because we'll start from Sarn Ford next time.
La la la. If I can't see it, it's not interesting.
That's it.
But do shout if you guys are getting mob pies.
Okay.
It's just so cool to see all this new scenery. So fascinating.
I assume we can't cross the river.
Not the Brandywine, no. Across the
Yeah.
Little River, though.
Right, we can cross this one. This is the one that has the that we crossed originally there.
Yeah. And a quick hop and skipping down to Sarn Ford.
Going down to Sarn Ford, gonna meet some friends of mine.
All right.
All right.
We're close now. So it's interesting how the terrain, both the forest and the mobs, like we're still getting horns and stuff, or at least we were north of the river there, are still very very old forest-esque, right? Like we're getting
Well, we only just left the old forests. We're now in Ruddymore.
Yeah, right.
Look at the big red
Still
rocks.
the very southern fringes. Wow.
Yeah.
Ruddymore is indeed
Whoa.
ruddy.
Yes.
Aptly named.
This is the same rock, though. That is one of those piles that looks like it might not be a pile. Oh, look, they're all over the place here.
It's like Uluru.
Oh, look, there's a tower I'm not looking at.
Nope. Can't see the tower.
Nope.
Yep, don't
'cause
look at
that's
the
not
gazebo
direction of
either.
Sarn Ford. I
Nope.
shan't look at the gazebo.
All I can see are cows. Big old cows.
Just rocks and cows. And no gazebo. Off at 10 o'clock. Not at all.
Alright, here's a road. Bang a right.
I don't think
Almost
these
there.
guys are cousins of Dwayne. I think Dwayne was a different animal.
We will
think
find
so
out
too.
soon what Standing Stone will do about Dwayne.
And here we are.
Hashtag save Dwayne.
Sarn Ford, wow.
Wow.
It's tiny.
It's a Ford.
Hello there.
No, it's a
There's-
Chevy.
The Ford is huge.
It's built Ford tough.
I drive a Ford, so it's funny to me.
All right.
Some nice eyots here.
Yes. All right. Bound to the
Fords,
milestone
Yachts.
at Sarn Ford. So this is where we will start next time, and we will begin and we will look around from here at many of the things that were there to be seen that I totally didn't see.
There's also a stable
Excellent.
master here, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, I got the
Wouldn't hurt.
Stable Master too,
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt.
as a
Yeah.
little backup system.
Just reminding our friends.
Yeah.
What can I
Where?
do for you? How can I be of service?
Oh, there he is. Where can you go from here? Other places in Cardoon and Mickle Delving. Right. Interesting.
Fun.
Hey, we like the
Interesting.
game.
Yeah, I saw. That's how
Yeah.
much fun we're having. It's not a party until we start lagging.
Excellent.
There we go. Finally got my milestone bound.
All right.
Cool. All right.
Right.
Very good. We made it to Sarn Ford, all the way down the Withywindle to the Brandywine and south. All those connections that I dreamed about for years. Very cool. Very cool. All right. We will talk about Sarn Ford and examine Sarn Ford and its surroundings next time. Meanwhile, it is super late, so we will let folks go. Thanks everybody for joining us on our adventure here this evening, and we will next week we will begin it Sarn Ford, our field trip. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye now.